Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Identity Library. My name is Veronica Becher, and today I'm sitting with my most famous person called Loridana Foksha.
I'm back. I'm back, everybody. I'm back here. What's good?
Okay.
Happy to be back.
So, Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year 2025. And also, how we start our podcast, we always finish them, and Loridana is back.
I'm back.
On set. I hope you had a wonderful break. Today's the first day of class, and I had an amazing day. I'm just
happy FDOC for y'all.
And like I said, I had an amazing day. Super nice people, super interesting people. I think the amount of people asking me about my accent was just crazy, enormous. And I was teaching some people German how to greet someone. Not that it's so much different, but
how do you say hello?
Exactly. Hello.
Wow, that's so cool.
Welcome to my life. But basically, today we're here for a special episode that I thought might be really interesting.
A reoccurring character. I'm a star. I'm back, everybody.
Oh my gosh. Just as a disclaimer, or not disclaimer, if you're ever listening to my podcast and you're interested in the student media being involved, I feel like I should get paid for this advertisement. Or you want to be...
It's what we're good for.
Marketing. Business students. Oh my gosh. And you ever feel like, being a podcaster or anything else, you can always reach out to me or reach out to the student media at NC State. And as long as you're taking at least one credit hour, you can be part of our nice little group.
Okay, plug in.
But now coming back. Okay. Now going back to the actual topic. Today, I would love to talk about your experience in Spain and how... it's been a semester.
It's been a whole semester. It's been some time.
So
back.
Yes.
Changed. I'm a different but the same person.
Okay, maybe
no.
Oh my gosh.
I'm happy to be back. Guys, it feels really good to be back in the studio right now. I miss this. I love yapping and I want people to listen to me, okay?
I love how we started off this whole podcast with Loridana freaking out with this little frog that disappeared throughout the whole semester, and I have no idea who the heck. Yes, who the heck stole? So the question, probably we're gonna name this episode, "Who Stole the Frog?"
Who stole the frog? All right, my guess is
Abdullah.
Abdullah,
if you're listening to that, yes, you got featured. If you ever, I feel like my advertisement is too long, but if you ever feel like, checking out a different episode called In the East Wing, and you're interested in spies, conspiracy theories, not really, but, anything related to CIA agents, and you're just interested in interesting stories.
Interesting stories.
Check out the podcast In the East Wing by Abdullah Najjar, who also, by the way, won the best podcast of the year. Last semester. So enough. We're starting. So could you please give us a rundown of what happened to you in Spain?
A lot, man.
Maybe like why are you in Spain? Why are you in Spain? Like people.
Why am I in Spain? Okay.
Yeah.
For everyone new here. I am basically I am in a program called the IBDD program, International Business Dual Degree Program in pool management. And so basically this is a dual degree program where you have 2 countries, 2 universities, 2 degrees, 2 languages, and just like one huge experience. Veronica is also in this degree. As y'all know, you should know already. I am in like the opposite way, so I'm doing my 2 years at NC State and my last 2 years at Comillas Acade in Madrid. I did like a half Spanish, half English for the. Cut that out. And cut it out. And España, and that was crazy.
So first takeaway of this whole podcast episode is if you go abroad, you probably will never remember your native language.
Dude, this. Okay, let's talk about this first of all.
Let's start with the language.
Let's hit languages.
Okay.
So, English is obviously my native language. It's the language that I mainly think in. I also grew up speaking Romanian, a very rundown, like Moldovan dialect type of Romanian. And so that in of itself was like growing up two languages, and then, maybe throw some Russian in there because, it's Russian heavily influences Romanian and especially our Moldovan dialect. And then I'm learning Spanish and, living now in a Spanish speaking country, Spain in of itself, which even then, Spain Spanish is very different from like Latin America and South America Spanish. So like even the way that it's taught here is different from over there. But living in Spain has taught me that I did not know enough of any language at all. And the first couple of days, like a few weeks, maybe a whole month, like this semester has been hard, to say the least. All my classes are in Spanish. And that means I'm learning corporate finance, I'm learning marketing research, I'm learning like strategic analytics, all in Spanish. And that in of itself is so difficult because I have to translate everything in my brain and then retranslate it to put it on an exam. So difficult. And then on top of that, when I'm trying to, call my mom and talk to her in Romanian, Spanish just gets thrown in there. And when I'm in school and I'm trying to speak in Spanish, Romanian gets thrown in there. And, it's hard to like come back and like grasp those two languages when I hadn't had a good foot in either one of them. So the languages is hard, to say the least. And I know, Veronica, like you've had a lot of difficulty with your own languages as well, right?
Oh my gosh, I went back to Germany for 3 weeks and I was struggling with German and that was not fun. Just especially if you're standing trying to buy some bread in the bakery and you forget what the word is for bread. Yes, experiences like that happen. And the moment a random guy walked up to me at the dentist's office and asked me something in English, I was like, oh my gosh, someone who wants my English here. And it was the best experience ever.
Yeah, I found a lot of Romanian people speaking in like in Spain, living in Spain, or like, on the airplane or in like different parts of the world, or like Russians in Portugal, because there's a lot of Russians in Portugal, like the Russian community population. And I got so excited when they could speak Russian and Spanish, because that meant that I didn't have to choose between either, and I can just speak both at the same time. And that's how like my brain flows with both languages. I'm just like, I'm speaking in Romanian and Spanish at the same time, and they can understand me, and it's the best. And like I don't have to worry about like, oh wait, what is this word in the other language? I can speak freely. And sometimes my mind stops because then two words come into my head, and I'm like, oh my god, wait, what do I say? What do I say? What should I say? What's better?
I think it's worse when neither, like...
Yeah, nothing. It's worse when nothing comes in your head.
Yes, and you're like, I actually forgot the word. And then they like, what it would be in German? I'm like, I don't remember it in any of the languages I speak. And
like, I know the concept of it. I know that, but I can't tell you the word. And it can be something so stupid, like dustpan. I don't know. Like bread. So...
I know, especially the most simple words that are just gone from your head. But it's it was a good experience. Yes, being back home is a strange sensation. You probably experience the same thing, right?
Yeah, it's like I'm in between like it felt like I've never left, and at the same time it doesn't necessarily feel like home anymore.
I totally agree. I feel like the initial topic of this podcast episode was Spain, but I feel like one of the experiences I've encountered this break was just when you leave your parents' house and you come back, you're like, I've changed. I'm a different person. I've grown so much. I've been living by myself. And the moment you step inside the apartment, nothing changes. Mm-hmm. It feels like you're again the kid who was...
I'm still my mommy's little girl.
Yes. And that means your parents sometimes, I mean, with much love, I don't think my parents treat me as much as a kid this time than they used to, but you still feel like you're treated as a kid, and it feels like you've never grown and never left. But then at the same time, I realized the people stayed in my hometown, and there are barely any people left. They didn't evolve as much. I feel like the experience of going abroad was the one that gave me a lot of like a huge perspective change on things and how we approach communication between people.
That's definitely something that I've experienced as well. And I think I first experienced that at NC State, and even more so in Spain, because I go to a very international school. It's a very small school, but there's a lot of internationals that go there as well. And I'm honestly more friends with other like Europeans than with Spanish students. I've met and befriended Germans and Irish and people from the UK, just in general, Italy and France and whatever. And it definitely is eye-opening, to say the least.
Maybe a fun fact for the listeners, there's this German guy, German girl, no disclosure of names, and both of them went to the same university with me, but the girl went to State and the guy went to her university. Yeah. So when Laura came, Laura was visiting me in Germany over Christmas break while I got my wisdom teeth removed. So basically I could not talk actually at all, and I was swollen like a little hamster for the next days. Made me realize two things. When people ask, would you still love me if I would be a worm? No, you should have asked, would you still love me if I would have my wisdom teeth removed? I think that's much worse. But basically, and the second thing is, don't do this over Christmas. Although it was funny. Basically, that was kind of a fun experience, that we had an overlap in our friend groups that we never actually expected to happen, right? People that we knew through like a different university end up going to completely, like, for instance, Spain, and these communities that kind of split apart and then go to a different country, but then there are overlaps between the countries too. It's such a fascinating network that we build up between people. So, which
is insane to think about, because for me at least, I grew up in a family where they all just we all stayed in our own little bubble, really. We kind of had each other to lean on, and like all of my friends were in Charlotte initially, and then I was the one who went out and kind of went to Raleigh first and got more friends, and then went all the way across the entire world. Like, I know people from everywhere, and it feels like once you go abroad and you connect with more and more people, it becomes more and more normal to think about the fact that you have a friend everywhere you go. And I think that's something that excited me, especially being your friend before going abroad, and something that I've never considered was that you could go anywhere, and almost anywhere in the world, and find a friend there and know someone who lives there. And I think that's just an amazing concept to me.
That's why I always ask, I ask people, I'm like, oh, where are you going? Where are you from? What state? I might have a friend who lives there, and I could connect you guys to each other. I had a friend of mine who decided to go to Japan, and I have a friend that was living with me in my dorm, literally in Germany, for a semester, who knew this other Japanese guy. Like, don't ask me what happened. And we went to literally, like, on a trip to Salzburg, and so many things happened. So I'm like, you have connections. And actually, one thing maybe to get a little bit of science into the conversation, my dad told me it's like it's scientifically proven that you're connected to any person in the world with 5 handshakes in between.
Yes, you told me about that, yeah.
And so nowadays, with globalization and social media, it decreased to only 4 people. So if you think this way, just imagine you only need 4 people in between you and Angela Merkel.
Yeah.
Sorry, I chose a person that we're not gonna, or Trump, or anyone else.
Yeah.
You have only 4 people in between. How insane is that? Of course, I think there are certain people that might be like not as connected as we, like, it's a concept, right? but most people fall into this concept.
Mm-hmm.
And that means
The
you
average
could,
person. Yeah.
yes, so the world is small. It is
It
small.
is so small. Yeah.
You meet someone and you're like, how the heck do you have a connection to my friend group through
Mm-hmm.
a completely different background?
Yeah.
How did you go to the same high school? Like, there are so many different nuances, and I think it makes me realize how much more we should put trust into our connections with people.
Mhm.
It's never about business networking that we always associate networking with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I want to have like the connection with this.
Opportunities and different job offers and projects to work on. I mean, it's a lot more. It could be a lot more personal than that, and it is becoming like that. To be able to like connect with someone on a deeper and meaningful level and realize someone across the entire side of the world could have a lot more similarities than you'd think.
When I was flying back to the United States, I was sitting next to a guy from London, and he was telling me how he's visiting this girl who lives in Germany. They met online. They never actually saw each other beforehand, and she out of nowhere reached out to him and was like, "By the way, can I just visit you next week?"
Yeah.
It feels like it reminds me of my like own deeds going to DC, in New York. But she basically never seen this guy before,
Mm-hmm.
and he said yes. And he was like, I could be murdered. Like, she could have died. And since then, they've been doing this for several years now. He comes over to her place each month.
Wow.
And they're not dating.
Yeah.
They're not dating at all.
Yeah.
They're just friends.
Mhm.
It's, oh my gosh, the commitment that we sometimes don't see in relationships, but then you see in random, like, strangers
Yeah.
visiting each other. I'm just telling you guys, if I tell you you can visit me wherever I am, I mean
Mhm.
it. You might just sleep on a mattress randomly next to an aquarium
Mhm.
and my little mini shrimps. Speaking of Loridana's experience.
They were great.
Yes, they loved her.
They left me.
My apartment also loved her hair, but that's a different.
I leave a mark of myself everywhere I go.
Just, other people are like, oh, I'm so scared that I'm gonna get murdered, so I should leave my mark. And Loredana's like, how to invest into this experience and put as much of myself out there
As
But-
possible.
Okay, jokes
I
aside.
just shed a lot.
Oh my gosh, yeah, like a little cat. But
Meow.
speaking of cats, speaking of cats, have you
Ghost.
seen?
It goes to an wait, what? I was gonna say goes to a completely unrelated topic. What are you talking about?
Oh, I was literally transitioning from cats to pigeons, but since you're living in
Freaking pigeons, man. Okay, we have a friend who's likes pigeons, okay? He has never lived in Spain. These pigeons they're like they're humans, man. They will just walk in front of you and they don't care if they get kicked. Like, what are you doing? Are you going to like work or something? Like, they're like walk around like with their chests all high and stuff, and they're like, like, move. I'm like, I will trample you. And you'll be like sitting outside because there are a lot of places in Spain where like there's cafes and then they turn it like to bars, or I mean, you can get a drink any time of the day. They don't care. But you'll be sitting outside at a table and just like chatting with your friends, and a pigeon will just like walk up to you like at your feet, and you're like, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be afraid of me. But they're not, because they were a long time ago, they were like, what is it called with dogs? And like, you're cutting this out. Okay, a long time ago, pigeons were domesticated, right? And then we forgot about them, and we just didn't care about them anymore. And they're like, no, humans. So they just like walk comfortably around us, and it's a little sad. But like, get out of my way, please. Like, I'm trying to walk here.
So the first thing you've experienced as a cultural shock is realizing why I would not like to have pigeons.
I get it now. I get you.
We can never convince our one friend who's in love with the idea of having pigeons, but I just feel like when you live in a different country, and do you know what these pigeons do too? Like, have you ever biologically, like, do you know what they do, like, in order to actually exist? So what they do, they find a nest, like a bird nest, and do you call it this way? Bird nest?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like just questioning for a second because you looked at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And they steal away the eggs, the actual eggs
I've
of
heard
any other
birds
birds.
who do that.
And then
those mother truckers.
And then and then the pigeons put their own eggs inside and pretend that these eggs don't belong to them, so other birds will work for them. So basically they're CEOs, like really bad CEOs, destructive ones, destructive behaviors. Yes, they put them in, and then the birds wouldn't know that, oh, these like eggs, and I don't even know why they wouldn't know. Like honestly, they look differently, but it's okay. Maybe they don't, who knows. But basically they well, they realize only later when they like, you know, that, oh, these are not my eggs. So bad birds, just saying.
Bad birds.
Bad birds. But speaking of not birds for once, I think like I have a couple of like questions that I would like to you to answer.
All right. Anytime.
And oh my gosh. Shout out to Sam if he's listening to this episode and he's right now in his car sitting and trying to like get from point A to point B. I apologize.
Sorry
that
about
you
the
just,
traffic. Yes,
you just heard some random things on this podcast episode. But I think what I would be really interested is what is one connection you made that impacted you the most in Spain?
Oh my gosh. I thought this would be a hard question, but like I one immediately came to mind. So I live in an apartment with 8 other people. 2 of them are the girls that came with me to Spain. And there's 1 Italian, 1 German, 2 French girls, a Portuguese girl, and 1 Ukrainian. This Ukrainian roommate, I feel like I've connected really well with. He had to leave Ukraine and hasn't been in Ukraine, like hasn't seen his family in a year. And he goes to school in Germany, and he's doing study abroad in Madrid. And he talking about just at first, like knowing what kind of person he is, you would never believe the tragedies that he's been through in his life. And I think it really opened my mind and made me aware as to like the world around me. And I guess just the things that are happening to people to this day. And growing up, I never really, like, I knew it was happening, but, you know, in America, sometimes you kind of live in your own little bubble because you're quote unquote safe and protected. But like in reality, like when you go and you meet so many different people, you also get to know, you know, what's really going on. And he would tell me about his city and what's happening in Ukraine and his own hometown. And then in like a next he's in the next conversation, he could just be laughing and making funny jokes and being completely unserious. And while he's made me so open-minded, it made me realize how strong people are and how much persistence we have as humanity, and how much he will refuse to be so upset. He can't go back to Ukraine because if he does, he'll have to go to the military as a man. And I think getting to know him was really, really strong for me. Being able to have those type of deep conversations with him, and for me to be able to ask him, you know, tell me about Ukraine, tell me about your people, and what's it like living here. And I think, and at the same time, he's just one of the funniest people I know. And he's so just giggly, and he's really nice. He drove us some weekends twice. He has his own car, and he took the 3 of us to Avila and to, you know, different cities in Spain. There's like really small towns, and we just do like a day trip there. Sweetest guy, like one of my favorite people I've ever met, and I really appreciated him being my roommate. He had a piano, plays beautifully, like a master, and he'd be playing the piano in his room, and I would go and sit in the living room and just like listen to it, and he's just the sweetest. So that's a human connection experience that has impacted me the most.
Loridana's about to cry. I should send this. I should send this to this guy. Just no comments. He doesn't even know if I'm existing. I don't even know if he does. No,
he does.
Oh,
I tell people about you. Don't worry.
Never mind.
You're well known.
And what do they know about me? And then I would just like no comments. Listen to this episode. And then no comments on that. I think that's a really empowering message of, well, we talked to each other about your experience in Spain, and I know like even though the listeners probably don't hear the full stories, and I don't think even this podcast episode would be enough to display the emotional roller coaster you go through when you move to a different country, as well as how many different memories you make. It feels like, I think it's something that I always keep in mind. When I returned back to Germany 2 years ago, I ran into one of my classmates, and he said, like after I told him what I've experienced, and I was just telling him a couple of snippets of my life, nothing too fancy, and he looked at me and he's like, whoa, in these past 4 years, you've experienced more than I probably will experience my whole life. And that was crazy for me, because I was like, whoa, would you say that I've experienced that much? And I realized yes, because you need to be, you realize how privileged almost you are to have these experiences, to meet these people, to have these like tough conversations and tough situations where you realize how disconnected you feel to this culture and how much you struggle, but at the same time it gives you so much joy and it brings you so much joy. And it's this up and down of emotional like situations that you go through.
It's I bet it sounded really good to hear at first, that like, oh, I'm experiencing so much, I'm doing so many things with my life. But then I don't know, when I think back this semester, although it was amazing, it was overwhelming, incredibly overwhelming. And yeah, you get to understand and see a lot of these emotions, but at the same time, it's like, if you really need to learn how to regulate yourself and your own body and your own mental health. And I think doing a study abroad experience is a really great way of learning yourself and who you are in a world that it feels, as you said, entirely disconnected from your own.
That's exactly like one of the advices I would give to people, actually. I think going abroad, what it does to you, it extracts you from your environment that you're used to.
You're comfortable, like your comfort.
Yes, but it doesn't have to be. And I realize a lot of people think, oh, if I live in my hometown, I feel comfortable, I'm in my comfort zone. I think that's actually not always the case, because there are a lot of people that don't like their hometown. Yeah. They don't feel like this is the place they feel alive. Like maybe I have a friend of mine who she just really wants to move to Baltimore. Like she's like, I hate it here. I don't live my life. I don't feel myself. And I totally understand that. Like there are places in the world you don't want to be at. But I think what it does to you, it completely deletes everything that is surrounding you and basically puts you into a place where you need to be yourself and prove yourself again for who you are. And you realize, oh, what are my habits? Like, what am I doing? How do I act? What is it that actually makes me as a person? And you can also almost restart everything. It gives you an opportunity. It's not a negative thing to experience these different emotions. I was talking today to you about the Mel Robbins podcast. Yeah. And she had one of these, she had one episode about college experiences because her son just started his freshman year in college. And I was thinking, well, I'm a senior. I'm not going to have this experience where I feel disconnected to my surrounding. I feel really not comfortable with the people around me. That's not true. I returned back from Germany and I felt so disconnected. I have no idea what happened, but the water didn't taste well. The other thing didn't work. I felt anxious. I felt overwhelmed. I was doing yoga at 7 a.m. because of the jet lag that was kicking in and still kicks in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, since when am I doing yoga? And since when am I texting people at 6 a.m? And I realized I'm probably one of the only morning people in my friend group because no one replied. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. That, like, especially especially if like a lot of time goes by, and my mom actually, she moved from Moldova to the US in 99. She went back once afterwards in 2003, I believe. And when she got there, she didn't want to be there. She just like automatically wanted to leave. My mom holds a lot of memories from Moldova that was probably very overwhelming for her. And Moldova at that state and time was still recovering after the economic, I guess, distress after the Soviet Union fell. And my mom could see that everywhere she went. And it seemed like nothing changed. And since 2003, I think it was 2003. Sorry, Mom, it's 2000, I don't know. But since then, my mom hasn't been back since. And she'd tell us all the time about her experience in Moldova. She was like, when I was there, I wanted to leave. And this translated into when I told her I wanted to see all these places and travel and go to Spain, she would ask, who in Spain is looking for you? And not in a sense of like being mean, but it translates differently, Romanian, as to like, what is there for you? Like, what are you, I brought you here. Like, America has all of these opportunities for you. Why are you going back? This October, she went back to Moldova. She didn't visit. She had like a surgery that she had to do. But she, was doing all the touristy things, and she said that Moldova was different, very different, and she noticed things have gotten better. And I asked her as a joke, I was like, how does it feel to be back into a country where everyone can finally speaks the same language as you? She was like, they speak the same language as me, but I'm not like them. She's like, I'm not like other girls. She fully was.
Oh my gosh.
She admitted that she kind of felt like a stranger in her own home. Not a stranger, like she still felt connected to it, but she came to America, and she identifies herself not only as a Moldovan but as an American citizen. And that's where she got her opportunities. That's where she finally found, financial and personal and religious freedom. And when she came back to Moldova, she noticed that, like, I'm an American now. And even though I'm speaking the same language as you, I'm completely a different person than you. This is not my home anymore. I don't consider this my home anymore. I have a home where I was able to grow and fully develop, not fully develop as a person in America. And it kind of shook me a little bit and made me realize, like, how, like, the place that you were raised as a child and like most of your life, it wasn't her home anymore. And it kind of scares me a little bit, because when I got back here, of course, it was only a semester in Spain, and I got back into the US, and I was like, okay, my people, finally. But then I felt a little bit like I was walking the streets of NC State here, and once a pack, always a pack. But I was studying abroad, and I was in Spain, and I was here on FDOC, on FDoc. But, this technically wasn't, like, my actual first day of school is going to be next week, from the day we're recording this. And a part of me is like, where is my home going to be? where is it going to end up? Is it going to move from North Carolina? Because it feels like my heart is in Raleigh and in Charlotte. And then is it going to end up being in Madrid as well? You know?
I had a previous episode about like what is home and where is home located for us when we move places and so on. And it just reminded me of the episode with Lucas. And it's just, I think the environment shapes the way we feel. Like it makes you feel a certain way. For instance, if you've grown up in the mountains but you actually always wanted to be at the beach and you realize the beach makes you feel better, there, I think the environment shapes you, right? Or like you want to live in a city, or you want to live in a small town. But I think home is something that I experience through people.
Mm-hmm. Oh
And
my gosh.
People
yes.
make you feel at home. So when I returned and I realized, oh, my little small town in Germany is actually not the same. People left, most people left, but what makes me feel at home was, I was talking to my mom in the evening, and I decided to lay down on this little sofa that we have that is next to her computer, and I put down my head on her leg, and I was like, "Mom, can you just pat my head?" And she's not a physical like person, like she doesn't really show affection as much physically as other people do. It was kind of funny because I'm a big hugger, but she just started like patting my head and stroking it slowly and being like, "Oh, I love you."
Uyu.
Yeah.
Uyu, mommy.
And I was like, this is how home feels. I, even for the first year in so many years, didn't want to go anywhere for New Year's. I stayed at home with my parents only, and we ate and watched 1,000 concerts in Russian. We were singing, crying, listening and playing different movies, eating again. It was amazing. And I realized it was never, yes, we do attach ourselves to a place, but sometimes what made me feel at home were the people. It's like when you know that there's a friend waiting for you at NC State that you return. It is this one person that texted you randomly during your break or during your time abroad and ask if you're doing okay. It's this moment of just a small, I think especially when you go abroad, it's these small gestures that people make towards like sustaining a connection with you that makes me like feel like, oh, I actually do have another home there, and there are people that care, and I'm not alone. And I have always a place to return. And no matter how much I feel like I've grown out of this place and I don't feel as connected to this one little small apartment with my little shrimps in it, I think it's the feeling of I have a bed that I can crush on, and it's going to be my bed in my room for like as long as I'm like probably alive and my parents are alive. And then I think the other thing is, I think it's okay when we grow out of places. You were talking about how, how you don't feel the same way connected sometimes to places that you've been at and then you move away. But I think we evolve, and with that comes also a certain understanding of places evolve with us too, but also we evolve as far that we don't actually feel connected to places anymore. I know. But yeah. And like a question maybe like to build up on this whole thing is, what do you think are like the top 3 things that this experience, this exchange taught you about yourself?
About myself.
About yourself.
I'm tied to the US a lot more than I thought I was. I'm going to separate this into 2. One being I knew that when I moved from home, I'd miss my family back at home. And I went to state. And I didn't expect, and I came into state knowing that I was going to Spain. But I didn't expect the relationships that I've made to impact me so much to the point where I would be so, I would miss them so much. And a part of me is also so tied to this campus as well. One big thing is that I really enjoyed this campus, and I really enjoyed my 2 years at here. And being in a city where that city, the entirety of Madrid, which is like a little bit smaller than all of New York, it's huge. And I wanted to be in a place where I'd know and see and like interact with different people, but it's overwhelming when there's so many people. And I think I really missed and really loved being at a campus. And I think I was never one to have college spirit, but I think I'm very much like a part of me really belongs at NC State, and a part of me really belongs with being with people. Another thing I found out about myself is, and part 2 of that is that when I was in Spain, like when I was here, right, I felt like I could differentiate myself more with people around me because I was Moldovan. Not me, but like my family. Like that's where my culture, that's kind of a very big identity of mine. And I've always found myself to be, I found differences in myself than with other people, right? And when I went to Spain, I found myself being more American in Spain than I've ever felt in America. I felt more patriotic. I felt like I was standing up for myself and up for, the people that I've left behind, because of a lot of stereotypes that Europeans, I'm not saying all of them, I'm saying like generally as a whole, have made and created about America and Americans.
What are some stereotypes that you feel like you've encountered the most in Spain?
Not good ones. I think one of the biggest things that I was offended about, which to them was a compliment, was that me and the other Americans that went with me, that we broke stereotypes. I think that was a big thing, because I always found myself like, as much as I saw differences in myself, I realized that like I was also very similar to most of the Americans around me. And one big thing is that English is the only language that we know. And for most of for a lot of people in America, that is true. That does prove to be true. But I also, for example, most of my friends here at NC State know another language other than Spanish, or they're at least learning, or they're part of a different culture. They have a different identity apart from being American. I think the term of a melting pot of America rings very true, especially being in such a big school like NC State.
I was like, speaking of languages, I literally was sitting today in class, and this guy goes, "Oh, how many languages do you speak?" And I was just telling him, "Oh, yeah, I technically know 3, fluently 1 that I've kind of lost." And then he goes, "I've lost my Spanish, but I decided to pick up Swedish." And I'll turn around, I'm like, "What? That's a choice." Well, it's not a bad choice, but I've never met anyone at State who's like trying to learn Swedish. And I was like, that's so fascinating. He said, "Yes, I love the culture. I would love to go to Sweden one day." And I was sitting there and thinking, I think the reason why people in the United States less likely maybe learn a different language and is, first of all, the education system that kind of doesn't start as early as in Europe to like teach you actually actively language. But then the second part that is missing is the so-called immersion yourself in the different language, in the different culture. And yes, we have a lot of Hispanic communities here, but the issue is you don't have the accessibility to actually travel randomly in 2 hours and you're in a different country where you actually need a language like English. You need to communicate. You live close to a different country. There's no other way of you getting around if you don't actually learn it. So when I was talking to this guy and these other guys that were sitting next to me, and I'm like, "Hey, I think there's a misconception," because the guy asked me, "Do you like America more than Germany?" Typical question.
That question I got asked so
bad.
Yeah.
But it's valid, right? I'm like, how can you compare 2 different countries that have actually nothing to do with each other and say like one is better than another? It's a preference thing, right? There are things that I hate about Germany and love about Germany. It's the same thing about the US. But I was sitting there and I'm like, one misconception that people have with Americans is that Americans are dumb. And then they looked at like the guys were laughing, but that's true. I'm like, no, it's your belief system that says that, oh, we are all dumb. We cannot do anything. I'm surrounded by so many smart people, literally. Like we talked today by one of the nuclear engineer guys, and I'm like, Jacob, you're like, I don't know if Jacob ever listens to this podcast. I think he's one of the smartest people I know. And there's so many smart kids. Like my horticulture science professor today.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm so passionate about defending patriotic ways.
Yeah.
Defending the U.S. citizens. But he was talking.
We even make Germans patriotic about the U.S.
Yes, crazy, right? He was explaining to us that he wants us to excel. And so when he enters a room and sees all the students in his class, he's like, I see people that are excellent, not averages.
Yeah.
You're not a C, all of you guys. And then we have a couple of A students.
Yeah.
You are all A students to me.
Yeah.
And the reason why you get a B or a C is literally because of something that happened, or maybe you didn't put 100% effort into, but it has nothing to do about you as a person. This grade doesn't dictate who you are as a person. This grade doesn't change who you are, no matter what. It's just a assignment that you decide to get a letter on, a grade, a percentage on your paper. But it was just, I started thinking about it. I'm like, we have a misconception. There's so many people that know other languages. But also, I think the perception of if you go abroad, you should stop pursuing your own culture happens a lot in the United States, as well as also in Europe. How many people move to a different country and they're like, we should forget our past and never teach
that comes with a lot of history as well.
Yes.
Because, like, back when there was a lot of immigrants coming into the U.S., a lot of them were being discriminated against and being not persecuted, but discriminated against for, their own culture. And they still are today, but it was very prevalent back then. And with that came the American dream, the idea of not only leaving, but escaping your country in order to pursue opportunities that are offered here because of our capitalist society. But, nonetheless, opportunities. And, I'm so happy that my parents taught me and that I was raised with being Slavic and being Moldovan, and that's like a very big part of my identity. But there are also a lot of people, like I have this one friend back in Charlotte, and like her grandparents speak Polish, and I think her mom would also speak, or like her grandparents like didn't teach her mom, or her mom didn't teach her, but she never ended up learning Polish. And it comes from that, like, that fear of if someone knows what kind of who you are or where you come from in America, then you're not gonna become successful, which is the main reason why they, went there in the first place. And yeah, and it happens all over as well. I also wanted to touch on when you were talking about how big America is versus Spain. And I also find that being American there, you're asked about a lot of American things. And a lot of those things we don't know because America is so big and so much of media comes from America. And like I was in class once, right? And my econ teacher was, I don't know, talking about some city, and he went to us, he calls us like chicas americanas, and then ended up saying US girls, which is another story. But he went up to us and he was like, what, do you know Jackson Hole? And we're like, what? Because they can't really speak English, and to when they talk to us, they're trying to speak in English because they think we don't know Spanish, and really we just don't know the answer to their question, and we're just confused. Like, what's Jackson Hole, Wyoming? We're like, we don't know. Like, what is Jackson Hole, Wyoming? And they'll just ask us a lot of like different questions, or, oh, like, where do you live? Oh, I live in the east part of America. I live in North Carolina. Carolina del Norte. Where? Like, oh, that's like the east part. Oh, what do you like more, the east or the west? I've never been to the west. I've never been farther than Tennessee. I've never been to that part of the U.S. And to them, it's such a shocker. It's like, what? Like, have you not traveled? Like, I've traveled like up and down the East Coast, but that's as far as I went because America is so big. And in Spain, you know, people in their Europeans in their own respective countries know everything about their country because it's so small. And they're always so surprised, like, oh yeah, I just got my passport. I just got my passport last year. And for them, it's like they've been traveling ever since they were born. And it's just it's a shocker to them. Like with me and a lot of Americans, we just kind of continue to shock each other back and forth with own topics of our own culture and our own countries.
I actually disagree. My really directness moment was
Okay.
just coming through.
Bring it on.
I think I disagree with we know everything about a country.
Okay,
No,
that was an exaggeration.
No, but it makes sense because I think that's the misconception people have too. Yes, we might know more of the cities, but I have two experiences that I had, like in my life with Germany, and one is like, oh, I know I've been to Germany, and then I'm like, where have you been? And like Berlin, and I'm like, do you know that it takes me probably 10 to 12 hours to cross Germany to Berlin, and it's further away than France, Belgium, the Netherlands. And then the person looks at me like, what do you mean? I'm like, I've only been twice to Berlin, even though maybe the distance is not compared to any of the like American standards. But it's like, for German standards, that's far.
And that's what I'm saying, is that 10 to 12 hours is a lot.
Yeah, but it's not
and it
here.
It is still a lot here, but like, I think for my family at least, like we always try to avoid going on the plane because we're saving money, whatever. So whenever we had to go to Massachusetts, like where a lot of my family is, we would drive there. It would take like 13 hours. But I mean, you still. Also, another thing is that like, it was quicker for you to go to other countries than it was for you to go to Berlin.
Yes. But that's also like, but we're looking at just Germany, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, people, because they think Germany is so small, they have this misconception of, you know, of course we have 4 handshakes, but people forget about the 4 handshakes before you meet this one person. So they're like, oh, I know this one German person. Do you know Jana? And I'm like, what? How should I know this person? Like, you're just mentioning a random German that lives in Germany, and you're expecting me, not even from the same town, literally across of Germany, to know this person? Sometimes it happens, but it's really rare. We're not, it's like, there's this joke that Irish people do that. They would ask, what is your connection and who do you know? Because apparently my Irish professor was explaining to me.
I've seen that,
that people
everyone's related.
Yes. And she's like, whose cousin are you? Like,
Whose
it feels
cousin
like...
and then you're like, oh yeah, this is my aunt. Oh my God, I know her.
Yeah, and she even said it's almost a custom to invite an Irish person over, even though it's a stranger at first, to your family gatherings and dinner to like see if you're related in any kind of way.
Yeah.
And so...
You just talk about your family tree for like 30 seconds and you're like, oh, there you are.
Yes. And then so my Irish professor was like, I actually met this random lady and decided to invite her over. My husband was freaking out because I just invited a stranger to a family dinner, and then realized that she went to school with her brother or cousin, something like that, in the same small town. It was hilarious. I'm like, I'm not ready for that. But we are drifting apart. Drifting apart is crazy. Drifting away.
We're drifting away.
Apart.
Goodbye.
I was asking you what are the top 3 things that it taught you.
I was a type. I guess this is something that was always in me. I just like never. I guess I never realized it, but it feels new. Growing up, I wanted to get out, and I wanted to explore the world, and that's why I'm doing this program in the first place. And I thought that when you're young and before college, you had to rush through experiences and traveling and doing everything that you possibly can. And yeah, you should take advantage of those opportunities when they're young and when you don't have responsibilities of your own. But at the same time, why do it all at once when you're low on energy because of school or because you're in a different country? And why just go one after the other? Because I feel like I've been experiencing that burnout of living in a different country and visiting different countries as well. I'm definitely taking that opportunity to being, especially being so close. But there was a lot of things that I hadn't planned, right? And while I was still in college. And this experience taught me that I don't need to do that right now. And what is really, I guess, trying to put out my priorities and trying to list out, what do I need to be not happy but content? And I think chasing happiness leads you to kind of a downfall every single time. A friend just told me this yesterday. They did an experiment where they measured happiness levels for like an Olympian athlete that just won a gold medal, and the levels of someone who's just been paralyzed. It's completely different levels of life, right? But those extreme moments slowly over time would level out and would meet in the middle at some point. What I realized is that constantly chasing that high will lead me to become overwhelmed over and over and over again until I'm burned out by the time I'm 25. And I think it would be nice to, live in Europe right after I graduate and, go to different countries and do things over and over and over again. But like even this semester, I got burnt out and I wanted to go home. And by exams, I wanted to go home so bad. I would stay up every single night, not being able to fall asleep because I knew that, in 2 weeks, in 1 week, in 1 week, 3 days, I'll be back at home. I'll be back home. I'll be with my family to a place, not where it's like, not because it's comfortable, but because it's where a piece of me lies. And I think I realized for myself that I really value where home is and not a specific place, but like you said, with the people that you belong to. And I thought that I would find those people like that in Spain. I definitely have to some degree, but I think the first ones are really special.
Whoa, so deep. I assume you felt lonely and homesick being abroad. But would you ever, if you go back, would you ever make the same decision to going abroad? No matter the consequences and the feelings that go with that.
100% yes. Because first of all, if I didn't go, then I would just keep regretting not going. And I wouldn't have as many special moments with people as I did. I got very, I got very in touch with my emotional side when I left. I have never cried like that in so long. It really wore me out. But when I got there, it's amazing. Spain is amazing in of itself. And Madrid is amazing. The people in it are amazing, and the people that I've met, I wouldn't have been able to realize it's that phrase, what is it, like when you leave you don't know the things you love or that you hold true to yourself until you miss them. And I think that's what I needed, to miss a place, to miss the people, and to just, I don't know, it's a new experience and something that I've been wanting to do my entire life. And I don't know, it's exciting, to say the least.
What is probably the best thing you've experienced, like traveling to different places, being out there? What was something that you feel like stuck with you and you're like, whoa, I love this one moment because it made me feel so happy and so like fulfilled? So
I'd say this moment was in Italy, in Roma, Italy. There was a night where it was 11 or 12. And I don't know if you've seen this on media, but there's this cathedral in Italy where you walk in and there's like a mirror on the ground and you'll have to pay it, but then like it shows you the ceiling of the cathedral, and it's just like all of these beautiful illustrations depicting the Bible and like its stories. We didn't pay the mirror, obviously, but the lights were lit, and there wasn't a lot of people there, and it was just us five, and there was this sweet music playing in the background of like this nice, I don't remember if it was like piano or violin, something like that, and I can just envision it now. Walking in, there wasn't a lot of people there, and it was quiet, and there was these benches, and after walking around for a little bit looking at everything, we laid down on the benches in the dark and just stared up into the ceiling for a good 30 minutes. And it was, I think, one of the most truly relaxing and like meditative moments I've been in my life, where I was really connecting with like all the biblical stories that I've seen up, like I was looking at, and or like all of the history depicted on the ceiling of the cathedral, and also at the same time being side by side with the people that have came with me. And I was just processing that moment for a very long time. Then afterwards, we went to the Tribanu fountain. And then we just made fun of everyone who was taking selfies there. For like, they would stare at the fountain for like 5 seconds and then just take selfies and like photos for their gram for like a good 20 minutes. It was sad to see, honestly. Like, it is really depressing, but it was funny. And I think that like sudden change, I find amusing and ironic to be like completely just like fully just in one space and meditative and just thinking, and then next moment just being in a very crowded area and just laughing with everybody. And I think that was a very healing night for me to just like, I'm here, and I really took in that moment to just take everything in and be like, so many people have been here, and like thinking back to my friends and the fact that I'm in Italy right now, which I never thought that I would be for the next like few years, until I decided that I was going to go to Spain. I think that was just, I love that cathedral. I would go back.
Where would you go in Europe if you would have the chance? A place you haven't met. Like, I know we always talked about how you want to see Italy, but I'll be curious, what would be a place you actually would like to see that you haven't seen yet?
I want to go to Romania for obvious reasons. I'm Romanian. No, I'm not. Yeah. Apart from that being a big part of my identity, I've heard a lot of different experiences of it being a very underrated country in Europe. And that is someplace I would love to go, just to see all the mountains and the castles. And I've heard that the community in Romania is so welcoming, especially to tourists and to, just new people. I would love to have a conversation with some of them and get to know like about Romania. And it's just so beautiful. I've seen photos and I've heard stories, and I would love to go to Romania.
Beautiful. May one of your bucket list things
I have to go
be fulfilled this year.
He wants to go with me. Group trip.
I was literally thinking of you describing your experience with the paintings, and I was thinking how scared we are of loneliness, but then the places or the experiences that stick out to us and we remember are the moments where we talk the least. Where we don't actually have words to describe it, where it's a feeling of just fleeting moments and not caring about the past, the future, and just being in the moment. Like literally what people always tell us, right? Be in the moment, like enjoy the moment.
Which is hard to do right now.
Yes.
Especially in the society where like, and I've talked to a lot of people and my friends where I felt like I was like in the US, I was always thinking about the future. Being in Spain, and now I'm in Spain, I'm thinking about the past a lot. And I have to remind myself to just stick in the moment. Like, I'm here now, and I'm 20, And, and that's all that should matter. And I think, as you were saying, with those moments where you really are quiet, I think it's because we're just observing. And I think that's a skill and something that we should do a lot more often, is just observe. And a lot of people in Spain do this, where they just look at you and you feel like you're being stared at wherever you go. Because, in America, you glance and you just look away. You can't look at people directly in the eye.
There's this book, it's called The Voices of Marrakesh, or Morocco, depends like what version you read. And it's a German, oh my gosh, German scientist? I'm not even sure if he was like a director or scientist, but he went to Marrakesh basically, and he documented it. And it's back in the 90s or 80s, where you didn't even have any social media or any, like, people wouldn't know about this country, and he didn't speak the language either. So all he did is record this diary. You can read it, and it's not a thick book. It's actually something really feasible for everyone to read. And it's just him explaining his experiences abroad and how he doesn't understand what is happening. And one thing that stuck out to me is like him looking at this blind man who is accepting gold coins. He's standing on the street, and he's licking them off and handing them back. And then there's so many things where I'm like, whoa, what's that? And you never know. But it's his experience that he's had. And I think part of being not a tourist is just looking, not judging.
Yes. I think while being observant, I think a big thing is to ask, is to be curious instead of not knowing and not willing to know.
But it goes both ways. I think a lot of times people are so determined, that's how it works, that's how we should do it, that they are not open to questions. But I think the advice is find someone who will. And there will be people. I think I would like to maybe end the podcast episode with one last thing that you feel like would be an advice towards someone who wants to go through this experience, and something you're actually looking forward to in your next chapter, still staying in Spain, that you want to work on.
Yeah. Advice I would give. So many things come to my mind. I think last time I said, you're going to change, but stick to who you are. This time, know that you're in an entirely different country. And only so much can prepare you. You can read, you can talk to people, but unless you have that first-hand experience yourself, you're never fully going to be prepared. When situations and circumstances come up, you can't. For a few times, I was so confused as to why it was like, I thought I was prepared for that. I thought I was prepared for this, and it's good to be prepared. It's good to, it's very important to do your research before going into any country and figuring out, what is right for you. But also be prepared to be completely unprepared. Get ready to know that once you're in a new place, especially for me, I'm in there for the long run. Not too long, but 2 years is pretty long. And there's a lot of things that I wasn't prepared for, and a lot of things that I didn't expect. And I don't think there would be anything that would have let me know that there couldn't have been anything to prepare me for that. And I think that firsthand experience, you really have to come to terms with, this is happening, and I need to know the next steps in order to, I guess, regulate myself. And I need to know to be gentle with myself and, talk myself through these circumstances and figure out, what is best for me, what is right for me.
Do you have an example?
School. I knew it was going to be a small school. I knew it was going to be a private school. And I knew that a lot of the Spanish students were going to keep to themselves. I wasn't prepared for how much different. I didn't know. Here's some things I didn't know about the school. You stay in your own class with your own select group of people for the entire year. And your professors come in and they'll, come in every 2 hours, because every class is 2 hours, and they'll teach. And you stay in that class for the whole day, for the whole week, and for the whole semester. And we stick with the same students. I wasn't prepared for that, and I also wasn't prepared that I wasn't going to like it. I think a big thing, so to that, I'd say I wasn't prepared that I wouldn't. I can't say out loud that I.
You can. You can.
I don't think I like my university.
No, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think I think that's a really mature thing to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you think about it, it's like actually acknowledging the fact that you don't like your experience. When people talk about,
I like my experience, I don't like my university.
Yeah, but when people talk about exchange years and things like that, do you know how many people would not like their host family and things like that? Like, I don't like my state that I lived in the United States, or something like that. Like, I didn't experience that, but I think there are a lot of people that do. I think it's a great deal to understand that, hey, it's nothing for me.
Yeah.
It is also something that makes you grow and understand that, hey, I actually don't want to live in Europe. Or I actually always dreamed of visiting the city, but I don't like it. Do you know how many people romanticize Paris but get so disappointed because Paris is not the cleanest city that you will probably encounter?
Yeah.
It's such a romantic view of, I'm going to go abroad and study within a different country, and that's going to be so prestige and beautiful. Do you know that's not how it is? Do you know half of the time you have a breakdown about your life and your life choices, you miss home, you feel lonely. You cannot connect with people because you feel like no one understands you, and you speak 2 different languages, but once you go back home, you feel still disconnected. And I think the thing that unites international students is the fact that we all experience the same thing, just in different facets.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that I didn't like about Spain and Madrid and my university. And of course, I've met so many people in my university and through my my abroad program from different countries, and I love them. And I understand that, my university in Spain, there are a lot of opportunities that come with it, especially if you stay in Spain or stay in Europe. And I understand that I'm being taught by professors who excel in their discipline. And I'm getting, even though it's in a different language, I'm getting one of the best, pieces of advice and instruction and networking from this university. I found out for me that that type of structure and that organization for me and those classes, they didn't fit me and what I needed. And I think you just have to expect not only that to be unprepared, but also you're not gonna like some things, and it's not even I feel homesick, because of course you are gonna feel homesick, but in your own foreign exchange, in your own country that you're in, you're not gonna like a lot of other things about it, and I think you just have to be happy to come to terms with that fact.
What is the advice that you feel like, not advice, what is something you want to work on that you feel like something you want to take away from this semester and be like, this is something I'm going to change next semester, or this is something that I feel like I want to do?
I think I want to connect with more people in my study program, and I also want to work on my work ethic. Classes are very different, and the amount of work that you have is very different. You have a lot of more projects and more exams, but less homework. I had a homework assignment once a month, and I became very lazy and lax with my classes and not taking the time to study my notes afterwards. And something that's very hard for me is not doing something when I don't need to at that moment. I find that's something that is really hard for me to do. Like, unless I'm preparing specifically for something that's coming up, I don't want to do anything about it. And that one of those big things is studying. And I really need to work on my work ethic. Another thing, like as I said, is making more connections with people and hanging out with more people outside of, the girls that I came to Madrid with. Shout out to specifically Isabel and Kate.
Woo.
I would not be there for them. Oh my gosh. And I owe so much to them. They are like the light of my day. I wake up every morning just so that I can like go talk to them.
Two beautiful people.
Beautiful girls.
Really enthusiastic. Always open their doors to you. Oh my gosh, I love these two too. I met them here, so fantastic people. But yeah,
and the crazy thing is we were barely friends back at home, back in Raleigh, and as soon as we got there, we just connected so well. Especially like that happens when you live with people. You connect with them on the spot, and we do everything together. I took on the liberty of cooking dinner for them every single night. Well, like a lot of the time they'll get groceries or they'll clean up after dinner, and like I don't know, it's a privilege, I'd say, to be with these girls. But I really also have to go out of my own little bubble of these girls and meet more people outside of them, because they're not Madrid. Madrid is Madrid. And I really need to connect, especially the more Spanish people, because they can keep to themselves a lot. But yeah, I just connecting with more people in my school and making sure, there's a lot of people I can name on top of my head that'll be like, you know what, I should hang out with them more often. So I think those are my two for sure.
Yes. Well, I think that was a wonderful ending of this episode. I know this episode, like I said, can probably never cover everything that we could have talked about.
It'll take a semester, y'all.
And even then, I think you forget a lot of things. But
oh yeah,
I'm really happy to have you here again in my studio for just one day. But
thank you for having me. It feels so good to be here.
Wonderful. And
I love the studio.
Well, that's the first step, people. No, I'm joking. So, my dear listeners, please get out of your comfort zone, meet new people, especially if it's your first semester at college, or maybe not, no matter what year you're in. And if you want to study abroad, go out there and do it, give it a try. And
do it or you're boring.
Yes. No. What? Kidding. Oh my gosh. Please. So
don't be square. Be there or be square. Don't be square.
Conquer your fears. I'm trying to be so emotional here, like deep meaning, and then conquer your square. Like what the heck? Okay, whatever.
Yeah,
basically, no. Like, cool. Thank you so much for listening. I hope we're gonna see each other again. In a semester. And for everyone who probably oh my gosh, who missed Loridana, you get a special episode.
I miss you too.
So thank you so much for listening, and
I love you guys.
Oh my gosh, have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.